Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Raj Kapur. Hi, Raj.
Hi, Adi. How are you? Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So, before we start, I want to give a big shout out to Cesar Quintero from The Profit Recipe who introduced us. So thank you, Cesar. And I can go back to give other shout outs for others that introduced me to Cesar. But, Cesar and I have known each other for several years. He's doing a great work in The Profit Recipe as an EOS implementer. He's a true entrepreneur and helping many, many businesses thrive. And I did a great podcast with him, so I'm going to include that podcast in the show notes. Yeah, that was actually a few years ago already. So amazing.
Caesar and his group are absolutely the best. They're phenomenal to work with, and I highly recommend The Profit Recipe. They're great.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Well, Raj, let's now introduce you properly here. So you're an entrepreneur, experienced marketer, and the founder and CEO of the marketing company. So, and marketing. It's basically called And Marketing. So you have the symbol of And Marketing. So and-marketing.com. So and-marketing.com. Great name. And Raj, you strive to provide growing businesses unparalleled marketing strategy and execution services. So basically a fractional CMO. Chief Marketing Officer.
Fractional CMO, and we have an execution business as part of our business.
So right, it's strategy and execution, which is incredible. So we are going to talk about marketing, about processes in marketing, the importance of marketing. But first of all, give us a little bit more information about yourself, your story. How did you get to where you're at?
Sure. Yeah, happy to do that. So my backstory, so I started this business about 8 years ago. Prior to that, I have about 20 years of mostly big company experience. And so that's a mix of corporate America. I was a strategy consultant. I was a sales guy out of undergrad, went back to business school. I joined a very large multinational, had a great experience, met some wonderfully smart people, worked on some really great teams and some great projects. But I also picked up a little bit of baggage. I call that baggage, bureaucracy, and politics. And what I realized at the time, what I know now, but I didn't realize at the time, is that there was an entrepreneur that hated that environment, that was desperate to get out, that was looking for other things to do with his career. So I took all of that wonderful experience and I became a strategy consultant. So as a strategy consultant for a very small boutique, I got the chance to work with several different Fortune 100 companies in a variety of different ways over the course of about 4 years. And I absolutely fell in love with consulting. I enjoyed the process. I liked the stimulation. I liked the variety of the different projects. I got to see the world. I really enjoyed that experience. That only lasted so long for a couple of reasons. Number one, in my field, digital marketing is the transformative trend of my career during my lifetime. Well, maybe now it's AI, which is an extension of digital marketing, I would say. But when I decided to leave the consulting world, I really wanted to get more into digital marketing, and the consulting company I was at was not ready to do a leap into digital marketing like I wanted to. And then on the personal side, I had 3 kids, all boys, and I was traveling a ton internationally. So I needed to take a personal break from all of the travel. I was missing seeing my kids growing up. So I wanted to really make a change on both the professional and personal side. I assumed that I didn't originally intend to start a company. I'm very happy that I did, but I originally thought that I would go find an opportunity working as a sales and marketing leader for some small company that had a really good technology, that wanted to commercialize it, that wanted to build a sales and marketing team, and I never found it. But what I found in the time that I was exploring my career options was I found a lot of smaller businesses. Right, I'm used to working in billion-dollar plus businesses, so I found a lot of these middle market businesses that were trying to adopt digital marketing and were really struggling. So either they had a major strategy problem, so they didn't understand who their target audience is, they didn't understand the messaging, they didn't have a good value proposition, or they had major execution issues. So they needed a new website, they had to do an email marketing campaign, social media, blogs, SEO, all of that type of stuff. They had either one of those issues or both of those issues. So I just started getting projects, right? I was a consultant, so I just started talking to people. They started asking me, hey, can you do this project? Can you do that project? And I said, sure, I'll do it. That sounds like fun, sounds interesting. I'll go learn it. And before I knew it, I had a little company. And I came up with a silly name that you alluded to, and marketing. And the idea behind that is that you do what you do and we do the marketing. That's the idea. I wanted to keep it like you stay with your expertise. We're the outsourced function, or now the fractional marketing department, which is the common term now. And so we did that for a few years, and that was pretty successful. But then the pandemic hit, right? So the pandemic hit, we almost got completely wiped out on day one of the pandemic. We lost a really large client. Their whole business was based on providing a healthcare service to people in large office buildings. So when the world shut down, basically those office buildings didn't have any employees in there. So they got these cancellations. And that was a very tough day at the office when all of our work basically got paused. But then through the pandemic, we grew tremendously, right? So the need for materials when everybody was home and they were doing everything virtually, they needed more materials, they needed a new website, they needed all these things. Our business grew tremendously through the pandemic. And then about 2.5 years ago, I realized that this difference between strategy and execution had a name, and I just wasn't using it. That was the emergence of this term called fractional CMO, right? Now it's a very common term that most people have heard of, but at that time it was a little more rare. And what I realized was I was acting as the fractional CMO for all of these clients, but I wasn't calling it that, and I certainly wasn't being paid as a fractional CMO. I was basically doing the strategy work in order to go get the execution work. And that was a very broken model, right? Not scalable, very much dependent on me. So we made a few changes to the model and we saw some really good results. And then very quickly, I ran out of time because I can't be the fractional CMO to 20 clients. That's absurd, right? That you just don't have time to do that. So I started going out to my network. So either through business school or through previous jobs or through just other people that I knew, I started finding other people who were independent marketing consultants who were starting to label themselves as fractional CMOs. And I started to work and collaborate with them. I'll bring you a project, revenue share, that type of a thing. And that started spinning itself up. Well, fast forward a couple of years, and now we have 55 of those fractional CMOs in our community. So we have two major business lines. So on one side, it's the fractional CMO business. So that's the strategy side of things. So if a company comes in and they want to grow and they don't have the fundamentals in place, a fractional CMO can be a really good option. And basically everybody in our community has over 20 years of experience. They've all run marketing departments of their own inside real companies. So they've been there and done that. And number three is they've been consultants or advisors to growing businesses. So what these companies need is somebody who's been on this path. Maybe they've been in the same industry. Maybe they've done the same type of a launch or something like that. They want somebody like that. And then on the execution side, we have a wonderful in-house team that does all of the execution work. Again, that's like blogs and SEO, websites, social media, email marketing, all of those types of things. And we're much more on the performance marketing side. So that means we want to make sure that anything that we do has an ROI attached to it. We're really into reporting, analytics, insights, and those types of things. So that's an overview of the business.
Nice, nice, very thorough. So thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so let's talk about marketing right now and entrepreneurship. The entrepreneurs that have a small, medium-sized business, let's say medium-sized business. What do you see are the biggest mistakes or the things that are missing in terms of their marketing?
I would say growing businesses, there's a lot of empty promises in the world today when it comes to executing marketing. Everybody is looking in every industry, not just marketing, but particularly in marketing. People are looking for quick fixes. Oh, so if I need to grow my business, I'm going to run a Google Ads campaign, or I'll run a Facebook campaign, or I'll just start doing this, or I'll do social media. So there's a lot of misconceptions that are based on a lot of empty promises. And so what a lot of businesses have grown on, which I don't think is very ethical, what they've grown on is getting a whole bunch of new clients under these promises, only keeping a few and not really worrying about the people who spend a bunch of money on marketing that doesn't really work. So what entrepreneurs are facing today is a landscape where they have so many options, so many people who are promising a quick fix, that what I have found is don't make any promises. Go back to the fundamentals of the things that are always true, irrespective of what the new tool or technology is, whether it's TikTok, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's Facebook, whatever the thing is. Always go back to the fundamentals and make sure you're building those in your business. Those are the ones that are going to result in the longest term sustainable path for growth, and not something where you're going to click a magic button, everything's going to be perfect. I talk to those entrepreneurs all the time. I almost it's I hate to say it like a joke because we're talking about something that's very serious because we're talking about their money, but it's like almost every single time you can predict the conversations that say, "Oh yeah, I work with this agency and they promised me all of these things. I spent a bunch of money. I just fired them after 6 months or a year or something like that because they never got me any results." And then when you actually go look at the results, you realize that they're either targeting the wrong person, they have the wrong tactic, or they're just not doing enough of the right tactics. If you go back to those fundamentals, you can almost spot the problem every single time. So I think that's the problem that entrepreneurs face.
Interesting. Okay. You know, we hear a lot about figuring out your unique value proposition.
Mhm.
What is your take on it in terms of advice that you give your clients when you are finding their unique value proposition or what makes them different than the rest?
Yeah.
How do you recommend that they go about it to find out what they are,
Yeah,
what that
absolutely. I
is?
think it is. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
Adi, I think it's the most common mistake that these growing businesses make. I would say 80 or 90% of small businesses that want to grow, so call it lower middle market businesses who want to grow, who've maybe hit a certain growth level but can't really break the ceiling, most of them have messed up this unique value proposition. Okay, so there's a couple things that I recommend anybody can do, whether you work with a company like mine or you do this on your own, is really think through what is your unique value proposition, and then take your value proposition or your messaging and put your competitor's name in your place. If the statement is still true, it is no longer unique by definition, right? So we are stuck in a world where your buyer, whoever that buyer is, whether it's a B2C buyer or a B2B buyer, is inundated with marketing messages all day long. Okay. And so much, again, 80 or 90% of that messaging all sounds the same. That's why we shut it out as people, right? So if you're given the choice to be better or different, always choose different because it's impossible to convince somebody that you're better, or it's very difficult to convince somebody that you're better. So really working on that unique value proposition is extremely difficult. So that's one tactic. The second tactic that takes a little bit more work, but will work, is to actually talk to your customers. Ask them, why do they buy from you? Why did they not buy from somebody else? What were the other solutions that they considered before they ended up buying from you? Really do some inward focus on why those customers or prospects, or maybe some of the people who did not buy from you, who chose something else, why did they or why did they not? And really understand that buying cycle. That's going to help you figure out your unique value proposition. Those are just two
That's
items.
interesting. Would you recommend asking the customers or your clients immediately after you close them, after you work with them for a while? What would you recommend?
Oh, it depends. That's hard. That's almost an art in and of itself. I would say when I go into a new engagement and I take on this type of exercise, I'm doing that right now, right? And so what I will do is I will get a mix of long-term happy customers, then maybe some new customers, maybe some recently churned customers, maybe some lost opportunities that you really wish you got. So some mix of that. Okay. And if you have enough of a variety of those types of things, you start to triangulate not only your UVP, but you also get a very quick understanding of your competition. I'll also add here, most companies don't actually realize who their competition is. They think it's another company that does something similar in a similar space or a similar geography, but quite often that's not true. Quite often the biggest competitor is do nothing or do it myself,
Or
or I don't need to
AI,
provide
you
any
know,
value.
that could be, oh, well, I'm gonna just do it myself and do it with AI. Then your unique value proposition can be, well, we are humans that understand and have all this experience and can actually interpret and see what, you know, that could be.
It could be.
But
Yeah.
you're right, because the unique value proposition, you know, I think, why do you think it's hard for most companies to come up with it? It's just that they cannot look at what they do, how they do the things differently. It might be that they think that they're doing things like anybody else. I mean, why? What do you think is the source of making it so hard?
It's hard to talk. Why do I think that's true? That's a great question. I would say it's really difficult to objectively look at your own business. All of us, it's true, right? So how do I objectively? It's like a doctor can't operate on him or herself. So it's like the same kind of a concept that when you're so deep inside the business, you it's very hard to be objective. So sometimes you need an outside party to come in and look at that business objectively without any bias. And your business is very similar to that too, right? Like developing your processes is a lot more different is a lot more different than it is developing processes for somebody else. So I'd say that's the hardest thing, is it's hard to be objective. I would say the second thing is probably something around humility, right? Because when you're talking about your own business, you're so used to talking about your own business in a positive light that actually reflecting on the maybe not so pretty parts of your business, or why maybe a customer turned, or why maybe a prospect chose somebody else, it's very hard to internalize that. So I'd say those are the top two reasons I can think of.
Yeah, agree. Now, do you have one marketing strategy like that you use the most, or that you've seen that is the most commonly used among small medium-sized businesses?
Oh, I don't think it's one size fits all at all. I think by industry, so I think the two biggest dynamics that impact how a marketing strategy can be successfully implemented, I think is number one is it depends on the company and their aspirations. So really, one of the things all of our fractionals do is that we'll go into a company and really understand what the company's strengths and weaknesses are from the inside. The second big thing is from the outside. We already talked about the outside. So I would say those are the two biggest dynamics that we'll look at when we look at a company, is really understanding what's unique about them and how the world sees them, and then how competitors may interact with them. I don't think it's one size fits all at all. I think it also depends sometimes very heavily by industry, because one strategy may work in a certain industry, it may work very differently in a different industry. Right now, what I'll tell you is really popular and becoming really hot is storytelling has been really popular for a very long time. But I think telling those stories in a human way through LinkedIn for B2B, and then through some of the modern social media technologies, such as TikTok or Facebook or Instagram. I would say Instagram and TikTok are much more popular right now than Facebook. So those are the popular tactics that are working. The other thing that's working for almost any business across businesses is the power of email marketing. So one of the negatives that very commonly comes out of social media is that you're relying on the social media platform to be your distribution vehicle, but that social media platform is a for-profit entity. So they want to extract money from you as a business. They don't have any incentive to get your word out to the world. The way you overcome that is you develop a loyal email list that is opt-in, that you allow people to learn and hear your stories in an authentic way. Those I would say are the most popular kind of tactics that we're seeing probably in the last year or so.
Interesting, interesting. So you find that email marketing does work, cold email marketing.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry, not cold email marketing. So there's a difference between what I'm saying and cold email marketing. What I'm saying is permission-based, building a list over a period of time of people who really want to hear from you. So if you can develop a reputation to be a good thought leader in your space, people will engage with you. They will read your stuff and they will buy from you. That's probably the most popular trend that I'm seeing right now.
Absolutely. I think it's not just a common trend for that is modern, will go away. I mean, this is what people want. They want knowledge, they want to be heard, they want to receive communication that they agree to receive. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'll also add that for smaller businesses, which is probably the kinds of companies that are either listening to this or the kind of companies that you and I deal with, one of the biggest problems they do is they just don't do enough content. So they might think, oh, I do a blog every month, or I'll shoot out an email every month. Well, your buyer, whether it's B2B or B2C, is so inundated with messages that they might miss your social media post, or they might miss your blog post or whatever. They're not really looking for it. So they just don't do enough stuff with enough variety. Or they feel like, oh, I already sent that message, I'm not going to send a message like that again. Well, in reality, we're all so busy, we probably missed that message the first few times, so we need to see it again and again.
Absolutely. Agreed. Good. So, Raj, what's your take on processes? Why processes are important for a business?
Yeah, so Adi, you're talking to an ADHD entrepreneur who has visionary tendencies. So process used to be my enemy, and now it's my best friend. Because what I realized is I can't do what I want to do as a creative person who likes to be extroverted, who likes to go meet customers, without actually building processes in my business. Otherwise, that would be pure chaos for everybody around me. Okay, so I'm a total convert for the process side of things. I would say, implementing EOS, which is obviously the context by which we have met. Implementing EOS was the best process that I have engaged in. We did that during the pandemic, and then meeting my integrator, who's now my COO, and going through that sort of rocket fuel process of her and I truly being partners in how we run the business has been the biggest process change that we've done. There's a bunch of other things under that, but I would say that's the number one thing, is really implementing some sort of a system to grow your business and allowing the system to do its job, and using the system not as a mechanism, not as a punitive mechanism where everything has to be done perfectly, but as a framework by which to operate, communicate, document processes, and things like that.
Beautiful. Absolutely. That is a point that comes up a lot in terms of when I interview in creative people in marketing or any other creative industry. That's, oh, we don't want processes. But the successful one said processes actually helped us because it gave us the roadmap and it gives us a way to actually execute our creativity. So I agree with you 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, Raj, if people want to hear more, learn more about you, get in communication with you, where should they go?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best place for people to find me. I post almost every day on LinkedIn. I believe it's a great vehicle to go meet people. So you can feel free to put my LinkedIn link in there. You can also go to my website. You said it at the beginning, Adi. So it's and-marketing.com. So And Marketing is the company. You can also Google it and find us. And I'd love to be in touch with people on LinkedIn. That sounds great.
Fantastic. Well, Raj, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast.
I appreciate it very much, Adi. You're doing some great work and you're providing a lot of great help to people. So thank you so much for having me on today.
Thank you very much. Okay, until next time.
Thanks.